Hi everyone, it's Charlie Webster here. Thanks so much for joining us for a new episode of My Sport in Mind. This podcast is all about opening up the conversation around mental health and sport and life. Season 2 is proudly supported by sportinglife.com, providing sporting opinion, debate and analysis for over 160 years. Today we are heading to France. Well, wish we were heading to France properly, but I'm super excited to welcome the Lyon and England forward Nikita Parris to the podcast. Nikita, welcome along. I'm personally very chuffed that we've got you on as a little bit of a fan, and I've got friends, kids who are really big fans of yours as well. So they're really excited that I'm speaking to you. They're like, oh my gosh, Nikita, but welcome along. So how is everything going for you? Because I know how much you've spoken a lot about how much your home means to you, but what about now living in France?
Yeah, it's pretty different. The first 6 months was so hard to adjust. New language, new culture. And I feel like living in France is a very different way than living in Liverpool, LA. It has a different vibe. So for me to get used to it took a long time, literally 6 to 8 months. I remember calling my mum in the first 6 weeks and being like, I actually don't think I can stay here. Like, I need to come home. And she was like, no, you'll see it out. Don't worry, you'll settle. And I did settle, but it did take me longer than I thought.
What do you think helped you during that time?
I think what helped me was knowing that each and every day I was living without out of my comfort zone. And that made me really realize like how much I really wanted it. Like I really wanted to come to France in order to improve as a player, to win trophies and ultimately win the Champions League. That was my dream. And I feel like each and every day that became stronger because I ultimately spend so much time in the training ground, on the training pitch, as much as possible to, get used to being in France, but also to constantly be around people that, made me feel comfortable. And at first it was my teammates, the staff. So I spent so much time with them. At first they must have thought, doesn't Nikita have a home? But that was just to help me to, settle down. And then as time went on, I got to know my neighbours, which was really nice. That helped me settle a lot. So my neighbours have got like 2 kids, and he was running up and down the corridor one day, and I was like, "Who's that?" I looked out, and the kids are running up and down playing with a football actually, and I was like, "Oh, this is nice. This is different," because I live in an apartment, so it was very different.
So it sounds like a bit of a community feel then as
Yeah,
well.
it definitely was.
Yeah.
I mean, they knock on my door sometimes and give me some food, and I'm pretty happy with that. It's like, no
Thanks,
problem.
you can come and look after this poor English girl that's come over.
Yeah,
Come and give
exactly.
me
I'm
some
like,
food.
yeah, it was
And what
really
about the
nice of
fact
them.
that it's not just France, it's that you moved to such a big club. I mean, they're the 5-time defending European champions. Was there also a little bit of pressure with that?
Yeah, for sure. There's pressure. There's always pressure in everything that you do, every training session, every gym session, because ultimately you're playing among the best players. And in order to not even just be in the starting 11, but to be in a match day squad, which is of 18, you have to perform each and every session because, there's 22 to 25 players that can play at any minute.
What do you think you've learned most about yourself? I remember watching interviews with you a long time back, and there was one from I think 2013, and just speaking to you now, you're very different. You're a lot more confident. What do you think you've learned the most? Not just since moving to France, but also through that period of your career growth.
I think maturity. Ultimately, everyone will probably say it, but as time goes on, you adapt to the situation around you. You adapt, and you're like a sponge. You take from every person that you meet along the way, and you try and bring out the best attributes of yourself, and you try and mirror those that you see your attributes aligning with. And I think over the years, I've had unbelievable amounts of great people around me. Farrah Williams, Rachel Brown, Jill Scott. Here I've got Wendy Renard. I had Lucy Bronze, Alex Greenwood. I've learned so much of all these people along the way, and they've really helped shape my career. And then ultimately, I had unbelievable coaches, Mo Marley. I mean, everyone in every interview I talk about, and everyone must be like, "Wow, Nikita." But honestly, without her, I don't know where I'd be, because she helped me not just as a player but as a person. Like when I first met Mel, I was 14 years old, and I was 14 and very immature. Let's put it that way. So over the time, she's helped me. She came like a mother figure, and she's really, her and her husband Keith used to take me to and from training. So we spent a lot of time together on the pitch, off the pitch, you know, during car rides and everything. So yeah, I've learned a lot of wisdom from her over the years.
All right, let's go to her then, because I was going to mention her anyway, because I think it's so significant to mention people that have had an impact on your life. She's obviously was your coach at Everton, and you said you first met her at 14. So what, and I think it's really important to point out that you said she helped you so much personally as an individual and not just on the pitch. So what kind of things has she helped you with? Is there any wisdom that you can pass on to us?
I think ultimately it's like in terms of immaturity, she helps you see how you can grow. And when you're working within the football world, you kind of get stuck within a certain age bracket. You're like, no matter if you're 31 or 26 or 18, you always feel like you're in and around 2021 because, you know, there's so many different age groups and you're trying to mend them all together and you end up being so immature at times. And yeah, that was definitely me throughout the early stages of my career. And I think what she didn't do was she didn't shout at me or, you know, make me feel uncomfortable. What she did do is help me learn and grow and understand, like, no, that wasn't right, or you can do it better this way. And I think that helped grow over time because we became so close in the fact that she helped me to obviously to and from training. So we had a lot of time together, and I think it was the fact that she cared so much. She could see I was a great talent and she could see I could go far in the game, but she also seen the type of person I was, and I really appreciate her for that. And Mo is a streetwise person herself, you know, coming from Liverpool talk stuff, you know. It's not the most influential area of Liverpool, you know, it's not. It's got a lot of growth to give, but there's many different personalities within Liverpool Elite, and we're from in and around the same area, so we both know what it's like to grow up in that type of area. And she definitely helped me grow and look beyond my area, look beyond my circumstance, and see how much I can have an impact in the world.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about that, but just and it's really interesting point you made. One of the things that I learned off a psychologist was you can't change if you don't understand your own behavior. And it's almost like that's what Mo was doing with you. Instead of shouting at you and putting you down, it was like, you know, understand what it is and how you can grow and how that can actually be really limiting sometimes with your own behavior. In terms of immaturity, what do you mean? Sorry, I'm going to ask you that because you said
no, it's okay.
Like what were you like? And yeah,
I think I was just, people will say many people describe it as a person with ADHD. It's got so much energy, but I just feel like I just had so much energy, like all of the time. I never slowed down unless I was sleeping. I mean, we always said, like, honestly, Nikita, you was like a buzzing bee. You was up, down, here, there, everywhere. And when I was younger, people may describe it as being like tomboyish, but I like to get into mischief. Let's say that I was always up to something. And I was like, when I was in school, I was the class clown. And Mo was like, yeah, I spoke to your school teachers. I'd be like, you spoke to my school teachers? How do you know them? And she's like, yeah, Nikita, you know, football is about discipline, and, you know, you've got to have it on and off the pitch. And definitely when I was younger, that was something I needed to learn and I needed to grasp. And for sure, over time, I've definitely become more disciplined in my role, disciplined in the fact that I know, like, I'm an inspiration to many people and people look up to me. So you've got to make sure you know, put your best foot forward each time. And for sure, you make mistakes. It's normal human being behavior, but you try and limit them mistakes as you become more mature.
Do you think that when you played the clown, it was a bit of a defense mechanism?
I just like to make people laugh, you know.
Just got a big smile on your face then when I asked you that.
I think for me, I'm just I'm always trying to crack a joke. I'm very banterous, very outgoing person. So, and most of the time, sometimes you need to learn when's the right appropriate time to do that and when's not. And I didn't have that barrier when I was younger, and at times I still don't have it now. Like, there's times when I'm like laughing and joking with people, and it's probably a serious moment. So for me, yeah, there's still growth to go, but I've definitely come a long way.
It's funny because before we started recording, I know somebody who knows you, don't I? And who works with you when you were about 16, and he was like, "Oh yeah, say hello to Nikita. She's a right little cheeky
Yeah.
Scouts or something like that. Going back to where you're from, how much of an influence has that had on you? But you know what I really would like to know, because I'm from a what would we call it? A deprived area in Yorkshire. And what was it that gave you the belief that you could go and be where you are now? Because I don't think it's just about deprivation in terms of like economics and finance. I feel it's very much on the limiting beliefs about where you feel you belong.
I think the deprivation comes from the lack of opportunity. Yes, obviously financially, economically. I'd say Liverpool Elite is one of the last areas that would receive any government funding if it was available. So, you know, you had to make the most of your opportunities. And I think that came from the people who was around me. First of all, my parents, family members, they always seen that I was good at sport, and they always pushed me to, you know, go into after school clubs or join the Harriers, which was a athletics club at the time, or join a football team, which was Kingsley United. So I had my parents, my family members, and then most of all my community leaders, like my youth club leader, my football coaches that were in grassroots, and then became obviously Mo and them who were the elite at the elite stage. So I've had many different people really, you know, have a big impact on my career, and without them I would never have made it to where I am today, because ultimately, as I told you when I was younger, I needed guidance. I needed, you know, someone to show me the path and really keep me on track. And, you know, your parents and them, they can do that when you're in the house. But I spent most of my time out of the house, on the streets, in the youth club, you know, in the sports centre. So I was so lucky in the fact that so many different people took an interest and had an impact on my career. And they say it takes a village to raise a person, and that's so true. I mean, the whole of L8 must have raised me, and they always tell me, Nikita, I remember when you was doing it and you was like this, that, like, yeah, but you helped me become better than that. And, you know, they never forget, but they also have always supported me and showed me so much love, to be able to, you know, push on in my career. And still to this day, even though I'm in France, I feel so supported. I get texts each and every week, how are you doing, how's things going, from different people, and I really appreciate it. It's like, people don't know the impact of what a text or a phone call or a simple email can do to a person when, you know, you're so far away from home at times. In the pandemic, you can be alone. It's very thoughtful and very impactful.
It sounds like, you had so much people around you that could divert your energy into something that was really positive. But I also think it says a lot about you that you had so many people that wanted to do that. Where's your own drive come from?
I think it's my mum.
Your mum?
I say, watching my mum. My mum and dad split up before I was even born, and I was in a single parent household, and my mum did everything. We are 4 kids in the house, and honestly, like, from cooking to cleaning to taking us to after school clubs, taking us to school, taking me to football sessions. You know, my mum didn't drive, but she was willing to get on a bus for 45 minutes to an hour to take me to training before we met Mo. Obviously, that when I was 14, but I've played football since I was 7. So throughout that whole time, as well as having a few other kids at home, supporting them and their interests, you know, my mum was superwoman. I'd say she was unbelievable.
She sounds incredible. And you said that you started playing football from a young age, and I know you've talked a lot about women's football and girls, and you said that you're an inspiration. You are a massive inspiration, not just to girls though, to boys too. Did you ever get put off by the fact that back in the day it was seen that girls didn't play football and there was that stigma?
No, I never got put off, because the boys who I played with in the football leagues or in the Sunday league teams or in and around my area, they always welcomed me. I was, you know, when you was younger and you used to everyone stand on the wall, and then you had 2 team captains and they pick off. I was always one of the first picks, so I knew that they wanted me to play, and I was happy I wasn't left on the wall or wasn't left watching or become the referee or just be the goalkeeper, Nikita. No, that wasn't the case for me, and I was so grateful for that. I mean, it helped my confidence, but from a young age, I always played with my brothers who were like 3-5 years older than me. So I was already accustomed to playing with boys, the physicality. And my neighbour Marcus, he built a pitch inside his garden for us. And at first I was only 5, 6, and I used to watch them play. And then one day he was like, Nikita, go and play. At first I was nervous, obviously. And then once I started, once one boy put in a challenge on me and I overrided that, I was like, oh, I'm settled. Here we go.
Because I do think sometimes that it's almost when you get older that those barriers get put on you and those attitudes get put on you. Because at that age, you're not, nobody really cares and you just get stuck in. And especially from that kind of community, I feel. Do you think sometimes it's almost it's when you get older that those attitudes come?
Yeah, sure. When you're young, you're a free soul. It's not competitive. It's a friendly environment. I feel like the remarks or the comments come when the football becomes more, competitive, more rewards based driven, and I feel like that's when people start to get, irate. And the first thing they say is, "Oh, you're not good enough. You're a girl," or that's just the easy thing to say.
Yeah.
They can't come off with anything more complex, because ultimately there's nothing more to say than what they can see, which is you're a girl, so you're different, or you can't do it because you're a girl. They limit you, but that's only because of how they're feeling. They're feeling limited because you're showing you're better than them. That's how I see it. So ultimately, my dad always told me, block out the noise around you and just concentrate, face forward, concentrate on where your direction you want to go in. And that was always, to be the best I can be. And regardless of what people said, he always said, you've got to have thicker skin than that girl. And that's what it was.
Is that easy for you to do then? To block things out?
I think it became a part of me and became a part of how my mindset was. I feel like I've got tunnel vision. I'm focused on what the one thing I want to achieve in that moment. And at times, maybe that's a goal, or maybe that's to make a major tournament team, or, sometimes that can literally be day to day, is like how I can be the best version of myself in this moment. But for me, I concentrate on what I can control. You can't control what other people say, think, do, but you can definitely control what you do and how other people influence you.
I think that's like the phrase of the last couple of years as well, especially with COVID, is I've heard it so many times. It's something I use myself, is control what you can control, because otherwise you just spend half the time worrying about things that aren't in your control anyway. But there are so many things you can control, and it creates this feeling, it kind of reduces the anxiety and creates a feeling that, oh, okay, I'm okay, of balance, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. You start to balance your own life, and there's decisions that you make. There's only one person responsible for the outcome, and that's yourself. Rather than allowing others around you to take control of that, or take control of you and how you act, how you speak, how you move. The best thing to do is take control of yourself, and then there's only one person to blame, if you want to call it that, and that's yourself.
Nikita, when you read a lot of stuff about you, there's a lot made of your upbringing and kind of how much it shaped you. I think that is very important, because it shows that young girls and boys, that they can come from any environment and be sat in France where you are, but also have achieved no, I'm joking aside though, but have achieved to everything that you've achieved, being at World Cups. But I wanted to ask you, because it was in a video, and only if you feel comfortable talking about it, you also had a significant trauma when you were younger, when you were aged around 10 years old, of the death of somebody. But again, only if you feel okay talking about it and how much that shaped you.
It shaped my, not just my life, my whole family's life a lot. My cousin Daniel, he was killed when I was 10 years old, and honestly, I never knew how much death can impact a family until that moment. I didn't even know death until that moment, because no one as close as he was to me had ever died before. So he was only 18 and I was 10. And we were, as a family, we're inseparable. We live within not even a mile, less than a mile radius of everyone in my family. So we live literally so close together. And we're ultimately like we have the closest bond to each other, whether we're cousins, aunties, uncles. It didn't matter. Like, our bonds are so tight. So yeah, that day, wow, it shaped our lives. It shaped the rest of our lives. And I remember the first thing I did was go to the Astro, which is a football pitch, which was like 2 minutes from my house, and just boot a ball around. So angry, crying. Just, that was the only way I could get my frustrations out, because yeah, it was just a traumatic time for me, for our whole family. And yeah, I've never ever, even though it's like 15, 16 years on, I just remember the moment like it was yesterday, and I don't want to remember it, but it was so significant that it's hard to forget.
And it's a part of your life, I suppose. And even though you kind of want to forget it, at the same time, I can imagine it's something that's been at the center of your drive sometimes, because of that anger, of feeling of injustice.
Yeah, for sure. And you always mostly what you want to feel is that you're making them proud. He always knew that I would love to play football, and he always knew that that would be a passion of mine for the rest of my life. And I'm so lucky that it's became not just a passion, but a sport in which I've made a career out of. And it's unbelievable for me. And I'm so grateful that it's happened. And every time I walk on the pitch, you'll see I bless myself, and that's because I'm thinking of him and hoping that he's looking down on me and helping me through the tough times, the good times, the bad times. He's just there to support me spiritually. And yeah, I'm a very spiritual person anyway, but that's definitely who's on my mind during them times.
So how much does spiritualism play in your life then, and what do you do?
A lot. Spiritually, I'm a Catholic, so I bless myself every time I go on a pitch, every morning, every night. I pray. I go to church. Well, during the pandemic, I do online church, which is a bit different, because ultimately a church is like a gathering and of a community, and it's nice to be around people who share the same spiritual vibe. But ultimately, you can't do it during the pandemic, so we do it online, and it's still connecting. And it's important to, especially in times of the pandemic when you're alone. I look forward to every Sunday going to online church, speaking to the people before and after church. It's nice. It's and also it helps me stay focused in my path. I feel like a lot of people around me must have understood that I needed direction when I was younger, because my nan, from a very young age, from like the age of 6, used to take me to church every Sunday or Saturday evening. And I feel like early on, I was young, I was excited to go to church or go to Bible studies, which was a separate part of church. When you're quite young, you get to understand the Bible and whatever. And then as I got older, obviously teenage years, you want to be out with your friends on a Saturday evening, and you don't really want to be going to church. But my nan used to say, but then I'd have to walk there by myself. And at first it was like, oh yeah, I have to walk with her because I can't leave me nan talk. And then so when I was in my teenage years, it became like, okay, then I have to go. But now it's a choice of mine to go.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like guilty if I never went with me nan and I make her walk by herself. And I feel like she just played that because she knew, if you was Saturday evening with your friends, then you might get up to things and then you won't be ready for your football match on the Sunday morning. So my nan was quite clever, I think. But I'll thank her for that later.
How much does she play a part in your life then? Not just in terms of taking you to church.
Massive.
Yeah, you can tell because your face is like light up when you talk about her.
My nan is so important to me. I lived with my nan for a few years as well. So from the age of like 6 to about 10, and then from 12 till about 18, I lived with my nan. So she's played a massive part in my life. And I really appreciate my nan, because as times like this, like when she's taking me to church, and I didn't really understand the meaning. I just knew that I couldn't leave her to walk by herself. But actually, there was a deeper meaning behind it as I got older. And she's like, at the start, my nan didn't really understand football. She's like she didn't understand the offside rule. I don't understand why two people go to challenge each other and they could hurt each other. I'm like, but nan, it's a physical sport. And she's like, oh, well, why don't you do something like swimming or tennis? Where I'm like, because that's just not my sport. But as I got older, she understood, and now she's like, "Oh, I went to church last week, and the guys were talking about you, asking how's it going in France, and they miss seeing you on the TV in England." And it became like a big thing for me, and that people started to talk about me. But I mean, at first, she probably didn't even want me to play the sport.
But I think that's a generational thing, don't you? As well.
Yeah, very generational.
Yeah.
Very generational.
Because it's like a certain type of sport that, I don't know, a certain gender plays or.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's all she's ever known. So for me, I took it on the chin. I'll be like, Nan, you'll understand one day. And I guess them days have come.
Yeah. And in terms of, you said, your path, what do you feel your path is? Because you talked about that in your connection with your faith.
Yeah, I think ultimately my path is to be the best version of myself, however that may be, however that transpires in sport, outside the sport, making sure that I use each and every opportunity, but also I provide others with that opportunity also. So for me, I was so grateful for the people I had around me to allow me to be able to, put me on a path to become a professional football player. And I want to provide that opportunity for others. I want to give back to my community to allow, the young girls, the young boys to dream of something bigger than just Liverpool 8. Or, at times when you come from a deprived area, you get sort of stuck in a box. You only see what's around you. You don't really see the world around, the bigger world, the bigger picture. Because ultimately you might never have left Liverpool. You might never have left Toxteth. You might, so I want to show people that, there's a bigger picture, and you might not find your place in the world within Toxteth or within Liverpool, but you might find that within France or within America or within Europe somewhere, or the wider world. You just have to, at first you have to be given the opportunity to do that, and then you have to take that opportunity.
Yeah, there's so much that I'm like, yes, because I think it's also that you can belong, because I think sometimes you feel that if you're from that area, well, that's not for me, that's for other people, and maybe I don't belong there, and then you kind of realize that we're all just the same anyway, and what you can, probably what's made you who you are, and that you can sit here and talk like that is because of those things and the community that you were brought up in and all those things that shaped you, and it gives you a very different insight and an empathy sometimes being from those areas. So how do you deal with them? Because you seem very balanced, very centered, and you've got a smile always on your face. And I saw something that you posted on Instagram that's, put a smile on your face. But how do you deal with things like injuries and low moments? You've won some incredible trophies, and I think it was last year in the Champions League, that in the final, that you missed through suspension. So how do you deal with those low moments, the injury, the frustration of those times?
I feel like I had a wise quote from Jill Scott once. She said, "Never get too high and never get too low." And I feel like that really has helped me center myself, because, in the moments when everything's going right for it, you can start to, get above yourself and go and think like everything is just for you and it's meant to be and all this stuff. But then when the bad times come, or the injuries come, or, the stumbling blocks come, you get so low that you think, I'll never ever reach them high points again. And that's not true. You have to go through lows and highs in order to understand that sport is never a straight line. There's no straight line to success. But ultimately, once you reach that successful point, you understand everything that it's taken to get to that point. Until you've experienced that, I think you have to, as I say, be a sponge, soak and absorb what those people around you have experienced. And, as I've said, I've had many great people around me to help me, not just on a football pitch, but in life, because ultimately, when you step off that pitch, there's a whole nother ball game to be played in order to, keep yourself focused on the one thing that you want to achieve each day or each year.
Do you see that in the moment though? For example, when you did have that suspension, when it was a Champions League final, in that moment, could you take all those things on?
No, all you can feel is heartache. The first Champions League final that you've made, and you don't play in it because of a moment of, ill discipline. Ultimately, it was ill discipline. So, and that's what I say when I say like I'm constantly on this journey of trying to, continue to mature to, that's what I mean. There's times when there's always lapses in concentration, and it can cost you, and it costs me. And that's why I believe, like, ultimately, you always strive for perfection, but perfection is something that you never can obtain. But you always try to be the perfect person, the perfect footballer, the perfect daughter, the perfect granddaughter. But you can't. No one can ever be perfect. But if you try and strive for perfect, you might get great, you might get excellent, and that might help you. That's how I see it.
You said about being a sponge, and you said about those moments of discipline and how you're growing. I wanted to tell you, I don't know whether you've seen it, but Sir Clive Woodward always talks about that. The former England rugby coach who was the winning who won England the World Cup. He says that the greatest athletes and actually people in general that can achieve isn't when they are the best, but it's actually people who are sponges, because they can soak it up and learn. And you said it a couple of times. I want to make sure I remember. That's something that he says, I've interviewed many times, but he also gives speeches on, and that's the key thing he always says about being a sponge and learning. And I think it's really important that you've mentioned it, because I think it's something maybe for people that are listening to think, oh yeah, that's a really good point. Because I think we get so bogged down in things where you said like ill discipline, and then we just beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
Do you do that sometimes, where it's just like you just almost like, I don't know, hit yourself with the stick, which
literally
doesn't help?
Yeah, literally I feel like I've got like a chip on my shoulder, a chipmunk on my shoulder saying, Nikita, why did you do that? And I'm thinking, because of this, but it wasn't the right decision. And I'm like, yeah, I know that now, but I didn't know that. And you're constantly like in a mirror talking to yourself thinking, why did you do that? But in the moment, it doesn't even cross your mind.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like it becomes a part of you, and it's hard. Like once something becomes like a habit, it's hard to then stop it. It's hard to stop a habit. But that's why I have to constantly remind myself in every single moment about, making sure that I'm trying to mature and become ultimately a better person, a better player, a better person in everything I do.
I do.
Otherwise,
too.
I miss big moments like I did in the Champions League.
I mean, I was gonna say I don't do that because I'm not playing in Champions League, but like I do too. I have to and I think we all do. I think if we're all honest, we can hold our hands up and say we have to check ourselves. And I think it's important too. So that you can learn from those moments, like missing the final of the Champions League. That I don't know what that feels like, but I can only imagine how annoyed you were. And
it wasn't a great moment.
And what about your mentality with England now? What are your goals?
My goals haven't changed, to win a major tournament with England. And the next major tournament for me potentially is the Olympics, and that's GB. So that's even another conquest. But for first of all, to win a major tournament. And that has to be our goal, because we've come so far as a team. And semi-finals, we're getting to semi-finals each and every time now, but falling at the last hurdle. And trust me, it's hard. It's heartbreaking. You put in so much work for them moments, and they happen in sports. There can only be one winner ultimately, but you like to think that your growth and your experience will come to fruition at an important stage, which I hope is obviously 2022 in England, the Euros.
I feel like I think we all fans, we feel like you're so close, like each time, so close. And just bringing you back to what you said, Jill Scott said about not too many ups and too many downs. How do you deal with that heartbreak then?
Oh,
when you get so close, it's almost worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fine line. You feel like you can touch it and then it's just snatched away. And I feel like ultimately you've got to understand that, as I say, there can only be one winner. And if you're not 100% in every single moment of that game, then you allow the opposition an opportunity to take the reins. And at times, obviously in the semi-finals, we've allowed America to take the reins, or Holland in 2017 to take the reins, and ultimately they've been able to guard that win to then push on. So for us, we've got to all the experience that we've taken, the heartache that we've had, you've got to put that into the next one and make sure that, you don't feel the same. Because we've had each semi-final we've been in, we've lost the game in different ways, which is hard to take but it's easier to take than losing a semi-final in the same way each time, because that means you're not learning nothing.
Yeah, true.
So ultimately, it's hard to take, but you've got to understand that all these experiences, all these different ways of winning and losing are going to ultimately help you in the long run, and I hope.
They will.
Yeah.
They definitely will. It's got to be there. It's there. I was just going to ask you about goal setting, because you've clearly got these big goals. Are you somebody that, you said about the Olympics, you focus on that, and you've obviously got your big goal with a major tournament with England as well, talk about the Euros. How do you goal set? Do you do it kind of small goals to achieve the big goal?
Yeah, that's more me. I don't automatically just think of the big goal. I think I'll jot down the big goal and then work backwards, but it's each day for me. It's every single day. Every single day I want to be able to overnight reflect and think, what have I achieved today, and what will I need to do to get close to that goal tomorrow? And that's how I think, because I feel like if you're constantly just thinking long term, when it comes at you, it might pass you by because you haven't prepared yourself for that big moment.
Yeah,
it's hard to just, it's like going into a game without a warm-up. How do you then get a foothold in the game? You can't, because your body, your muscles, your mindset's not right.
Yeah.
So ultimately for me, it's about each day making sure that I'm perfecting my craft, whether that's as a person or as a player, because ultimately it takes leadership skills of the whole team to drive a team to one goal, because a team's full of different personalities, different ways of working, different mindsets, and you've all got to come to a common consensus to reach the one goal.
What do you think is the most important thing in leadership then? And what do you think your skill is in that?
I think ultimately for me is understanding what drives another person. I like to, as I say, I'm an outgoing person. I like to chat, to banter, and I like to talk to different people, get different experiences, to understand, like, not just within football but outside of football, who drives you. Is there, your mom, your dad, your grandma, your sister, whoever it is. And then I think to myself, like, how can I get, because ultimately what I've learned in football is you always want to be obviously the best individual you can, but football's not an individual game. You need people around you who's going to drive you to be the best version of yourself. And I feel like if I can get the best out of my teammates, then they'll get the best out of me, and ultimately together we'll be great.
Nikita, you're an absolute breeze to talk to and an inspiration. You just make me smile every time I ask you a question. But the final question I want to ask you is, what would you say to, there's so many things you've talked about, but what would you say to anyone who's struggling at the moment, or what do you think the best piece of advice you've had for those moments? You've already said so much.
Yeah, I think for me, during the hard times is never forget there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's so many stumbling blocks that you will come up against, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch. But ultimately, if you're resilient and you're hardworking and you're dedicated to your sport, you'll always overcome it. Always. Because the one thing I've realized as a player is that, as I say, never get too high, never get too low. And, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, for sure.
What do you think resilience means to you? Because that's something that's talked a lot about, and it's talked about with in workplaces and also in schools and young people. But what does that actually mean?
For me, it's just having the ability to bounce back when times are hard. It's easy to keep doing something when everything's going right for you. The hardest thing to do when something's has gone wrong is to try and recorrect it and get yourself back on track. That is the hardest thing to do, whether it's in football or outside of football. But ultimately, for me, resilience is having that ability to bounce back and that ability to step up and be counted for.
Thank you.
Step up and be counted for sure.
Step up and be counted for. Thank you so much for sharing, Nikita. It's been, like I said, absolutely brilliant to talk to you. I've absolutely loved it. I could just carry on and carry on chatting.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope you're all enjoying season 2 so far and enjoyed listening to Nikita there. Make sure to subscribe and check out other episodes as well. Remember to visit sportinglife.com ahead of the rest when it comes to unbiased opinion and sport analysis. And if you're really struggling, charities such as Mind, the Samaritans, and Sport in Mind are just a phone call or email away. People do understand and want to help. And you can also text SHOUT to 85258 if you don't want to talk on the phone, as Nikita said. It's not necessarily about things won't happen to you, but it's about that kind of bounce back ability. Would you say, Nikita?
Yes, for sure. And don't forget, there's always people out there to support you, whether it's family members or just good Samaritans. So don't be afraid to pick up a phone or email or a text message.
Thank you so much for spending time with us and for sharing with us, Nikita. And thanks so much for listening. Take care, and we'll speak again soon.